Hey everybody! Hey, listen, I want to share something with you that had a profound impact on my life, and I wanted to share this with you, read this to you, and maybe make some comments as I'm doing it. It's something that every one of you should read. It's very short. It's called "As a Man Thinketh" by James Allen. So I'm just going to do chapter one. It's called Thought and Character. So it's just really fantastic stuff. I mean, it's just one of the great things that you could read out there. I mean, I know that one of the things that people don't realize is how much your thought affects you, affects your life, affects everything about you and everything that you are, who you are, and what you're going to become. So, what you think about. Something I wrote, creates everything, good, bad, or indifferent in your life. Your ability to monitor and control what you think about will be the single most important thing contributing towards your success. So your thinking is to a hugely, gigantic, significant degree determined by what you read. And so you need to read good books. What you listen to, so you need to listen to positive, uplifting, empowering, inspirational audios. And by who you associate with. So associate with people who support and encourage you and exemplify who you intend to become. Those are really important things that you need to do. So I'm getting on with James Allen's As a Man Thinketh. Number one, he talks about thought and character. The aphorism, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, not only embraces the whole of a man's being, but is so comprehensive as to reach out to every condition and circumstance of his life. So that's important what he says there. It reaches to every condition and every circumstance of your life it's determined by what you think. A man is literally what he thinks, his character being the complete sum of all his thoughts. As a plant springs from and could not be without the seed, so every act of man springs from the hidden seeds of thought. So what he's saying there is that every thought is a seed of something that could turn into something really good if the thought's good, or it could turn into something not so good, okay? And could not have appeared without them. This applies equally to those acts called spontaneous and unpremeditated as to those which are deliberately executed. Act is the blossom of thought, and joy and suffering are its fruit. Thus does a man garner in the sweet and bitter fruitage of his own husbandry. So in other words, every thought is the cause of joy or the cause of suffering in your life. He says, thought in the mind hath made us. What we are by thought was wrought and built. If a man's mind hath evil thought, pain comes on him as comes the wheel, the ox behind. If one endure in purity of thought, joy follows him as his own shadow sure. Man is a growth by law and not a creation of artifice. And cause and effect are as absolute and undeviating in the hidden realm of thought as in the world of visible and material things. A noble and godlike character is not a thing of favor or chance, but is the natural result of continued effort in right thinking. So this is powerful. Godlike character is not a thing of favor or chance. It's not happenstance. It's not luck. It's the effect of long, cherished association with God-like thoughts. And a noble and bestial character by the same process is the result of continuing harboring of groveling thoughts or of terrible thoughts, right? Man is made or unmade by himself. That is huge right there. Man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself. He has also fashioned the tools with which he builds for himself heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. By the right choice and true application of thought, man ascends to the divine perfection. By the abuse and wrong application of thought, he descends below the level of the beast. Between these two extremes are all the grades of character, and man is their maker and master. Of all the beautiful truths pertaining to the soul, which have been restored and brought to light in this age, none is more gladdening or fruitful of divine promise and confidence than this, that a man is a master of thought and the molder of character and the maker and shaper of condition, environment, and destiny. As being of power, intelligence, and love, the Lord of his own thoughts, man holds the key to every situation and contains within himself that transforming and regenerative agency by which he may make himself what he wills. That's a very powerful sentence there, folks. I mean, because of your ability to control your thinking, which you can do, which is not easy to do. I understand that. I understand it's it takes a lot of self-discipline. It takes a lot of focus to be able to manage what you're thinking about all the time. But those of you who don't master that you're going to struggle. You're always going to struggle. You're going to struggle in your personal life. You're going to struggle in everything. Man is always the master, even in his weakest and most abandoned state, but in his weakness and degradation he is foolish. Master who misgoverns his household. When he begins to reflect upon his condition and search diligently for the law upon which his being is established, he then becomes the wise master, directing his energies with intelligence and fashioning his thoughts to fruitful issues. In other words, controlling your thinking. Such is the conscious master, and man can only thus become by discovering within himself the laws of thought. This discovery is totally a matter of application, self-analysis, and experience. Only by much searching and mining are gold and diamonds obtained, and man can find every truth connected with his being if he will dig deep into the mine of his soul, that he is the maker of his character, the molder of his life, the builder of his destiny. He may unerringly prove, if he will, watch, control, and alter his thoughts, tracing their effects upon himself, upon others, upon his life and circumstances, linking cause and effect by patient practice and investigation, and utilizing his every experience, even the most trivial, everyday occurrence, as a means of obtaining that knowledge of himself, which is understanding, wisdom, power. In this direction, as in no other, is the law absolute, that he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. For only by patience, practice, and ceaseless importunity can a man enter the door of the temple of knowledge. So what's the number 2 is effective thought on circumstances. A man's mind may be likened to a garden which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild, but whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. So in other words, if you're not constantly feeding your mind with useful seeds, good books, good audios, good company, then useless seeds will fall therein. In other words, you're going to have things that you don't want in your life. Your life is going to be a life of happenstance. You're not going to be controlling it. You're not going to be in charge of it like you can be. It says, just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts, and cultivating towards perfection the flowers and fruits of right and useful and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the flaws of thought and understands with ever-increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of character, circumstance, and destiny. Thought and character are one. That's important. Thought and character are one, and as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and the circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. In other words, what you're thinking about, your inner thoughts. This does not mean that a man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character, but that those circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital thought element within himself that for the time being they are indispensable to his development. So if you look at your progress or lack of progress, one thing we know for sure, it's tied completely to what you're thinking about most often. Okay, so if you are exploding, things are going great, you're growing your business, you're making more money, you're attracting great people, your thinking's fantastic. Okay, if the opposite is happening, then you really, really need to take a look. Be conscious of what you're thinking about. Every man is where he is by the law of his being. The thoughts which he has built into his character have brought him there. So in other words, wherever you are right now, your thoughts have brought you there. And in the arrangement of his life, there's no element of chance. There's no luck involved, what he's saying. There's no such thing as luck, but all is a result of law which cannot err. This is just as true of those who feel out of harmony with their surroundings as of those who are contented with them. As a progressive and evolving being, a man is where he is that he may learn, that he may grow, and as he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for him, it passes away and gives place to other circumstances. Man is buffeted by circumstance so long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions. In other words, you're going to be a victim of your circumstance as long as you believe that what's happening to you is coming from something outside of you, that somebody's doing it to you, or you have some other thing other than yourself being responsible for it. So the sooner you start owning that your thoughts create your life, then those circumstances are going to start to minimize. But when you don't, you're going to continue to have them. But when you realize that he is a creative power and that he may command and the hidden soil and seeds of being out of which circumstances grow, he then becomes the rightful master of himself. That circumstances grow out of thought. Every man knows who has for any length of time practiced self-control and self-purification, for he will have noticed that the alteration in his circumstances has been in exact ratio with his altered mental condition. So true is this, that when a man earnestly applies himself to remedy the defects in his character, maybe lack of self-discipline, maybe lack of work ethic, maybe lack of, of studying, of practicing, of perfecting, and make swift and marked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes. The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches the height of its cherished aspirations. It falls to the level of its unchastened desires, and circumstances are the means by which the soul receives its own. Every thought seed sown or allowed to fall into the mind and to take root there produces its own blossoming sooner or later into act, and bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstance. Good thoughts bear good fruit, bad thoughts, bad fruit. So like right now, take for example, tough economy right now. A lot of people struggling, and a lot of people that you're trying to get involved to take a look at this thing, that you can help them. They're not going along with it, even though they're suffering, even though they're not doing well. You show them an opportunity to get involved and make more money and rectify their financial situation, and they won't do it. They won't do it. And you could start thinking, well, nobody wants to do this. Nobody wants to be successful. Nobody wants to grow. I can't attract anybody I can't find anybody who wants to be successful. Well, if that's your thought, then you're going to keep bearing that fruit. You need to change that thought. You need to change it to things like, you know what? I know most people aren't open to improving their situation, but I know there's thousands of people that are. And I'm going to find those people. I'm going to attract those people. I'm going to run into those people. When I run into them, I'm going to get them involved. We're going to do something great together. They're there, and I will find them, or they will find me. The outer world of circumstances shapes itself to the inner world of thought, and both pleasant and unpleasant external conditions are factors which make for the ultimate good of the individual. As a reaper of his own harvest, a man learns both of suffering and bliss, and we've all done that, following the inmost desires, aspirations, and thoughts by which he allows himself to be dominated, pursuing the will-o-wisps of impure imaginings, or steadfastly walking the highway of strong and high endeavor. A man at last arrives at their fruition and fulfillment in the outer conditions of his life. In other words, eventually those things will manifest in your life, what you're thinking about most. So if you're thinking about success and growth and abundance and finding the right people and growing a huge business and helping people make money and them helping you make money and solving all kinds of problems, well, that's what you'll get. If you're looking at all the challenges that you're going to have along the way and you're focusing on those, guess what? You're going to get more of those. The laws of growth and adjustment everywhere obtain. A man does not come to the almshouse or the jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Nor does a pure-minded man fall suddenly into crime by stress of any mere external force. The criminal thought had long been secretly fostered in the heart, and the hour of opportunity revealed its gathered power. And so like criminals that sell drugs or take drugs or steal from people, right? That doesn't just happen. That happens. That comes from thought. Just like the people that do really wonderful works with their life, also comes from thought. Circumstance does not make the man; it reveals him to himself. So if you're struggling right now, right? When you see people, you recruit people into the business and they struggle, they get a dark house or nobody shows up to the meeting or they get a chargeback or something happens. That's a circumstance. That does not make the man. It simply reveals him to himself. So in other words, we find out who you really are. One of the things I used to say about our business is I love the toughness of it because when I take people out and some challenging situations occur, which they inevitably do, I got to see who they really were. It revealed to me who they were and whether I continued working with them or not. No such conditions can exist as descending into vice and its attendant sufferings apart from vicious inclinations or virtue in its pure happiness. Without the continued cultivation of virtuous aspirations, and man, therefore, as the Lord and Master of thought, is the maker of himself and the shaper of and author of environment. Even at birth, the soul comes of its own, and through every step of its earthly pilgrimage, it attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are the reflections of its own purity and impurity, its strength and weakness. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Let me repeat that because this is unbelievably powerful. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. What are you attracting right now? Their whims and fancies and ambitions are thwarted at every step by their innermost thoughts, and desires are fed with their own food, be it foul or clean. Man is manacled only by himself. In other words, you're only chained up by yourself. Thought and action are the jailers of fate. They imprison being base. They are also the angels of freedom. They liberate being noble, if they're noble. Not what he wished and prayed for does a man get, but what he justly earns. Let me repeat that again. That's another powerful. Not what he wished and prays for does a man get, but what he justly earns by his actions. His wishes and prayers are only gratified and answered when they harmonize with his thoughts and actions. You know how people are saying, I want to build a big base shop, I want to make a lot of money, I want to help a lot of people, but then their actions don't reflect that, right? Which means they're not really thinking about that. They're thinking about something else. In the light of this truth, what then is the meaning of fighting against circumstances? It means that a man is continually revolting against an effect without, while all the time he is nourishing and preserving its cause in his heart. That cause may take the form of a conscious vice or an unconscious weakness, but whatever it is, it stubbornly retards the efforts of its possessor and thus calls aloud for remedy. So if you're struggling, okay, you need to really, really pay attention to what you're thinking about all the time. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. Okay, so this is what I talk about every week about working on yourself, growing yourself, studying, hanging around the right people, all the things. I'm constantly reflecting on that and talking about that. Because what I found about men and women in our business, everybody wants to improve their circumstances. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves, like the 7 fundamentals. Do you have them down? If you've been here 6 months or more and you don't have the 7 fundamentals down cold, you're simply not serious, okay? You're saying you want to get better, you're saying you want to make more money, you're saying you want to grow your business, but you're causing this yourself. You're unwilling to improve yourself. And because of that, you remain bound in your current situation. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. This is, in other words, being really self-critical of yourself, to see where you are weak. What are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? And then set to fix the weaknesses. This is as true of earthly as of heavenly beings. When the man whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object. Even the man whose sole object is to acquire wealth, which I think a lot of you might be in that position, must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object. And how much more so he who would realize a strong and well-poised life. Here's a man who is wretchedly poor. He's extremely anxious that his surroundings and home comforts should improve. Yet all the time he shirks his work. In other words, he avoids work and considers he is justified in trying to deceive his employer on the ground of the insufficiency of his wages. So a lot of you might even be doing that with your upline. You know, your upline doesn't take care of you, your upline doesn't do this for you, your upline, whatever. You have all the excuses about your upline. And things should be better. But such a man does not understand the simplest rudiments of those principles which are the basis of true prosperity, and is not only totally unfitted to rise out of his wretchedness, in other words, your pitiful financial situation, but is actually attracting to himself a still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in it. In other words, dwelling in that place, that thought, and acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. Here's a rich man who is the victim of a painful and persistent disease as a result of gluttony. He is willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it. In other words, pay lots of money to doctors to help him. But he will not sacrifice his gluttonous desires. In other words, he keeps eating all the wrong things. He wants to gratify his taste for rich and unnatural foods and have his health as well. But that's not possible. Such a man is totally unfit to have health because he has not yet learned the first principles of a healthy life. Here is an employer of labor who adopts crooked measures to avoid paying the regulation wage, and in the hope of making larger profits, reduces the wages of his work people. Such a man is altogether unfitted for prosperity, and when he finds himself bankrupt, both as regards reputation and riches, he blames circumstances, not knowing that he's the sole author of his condition. I've introduced these three cases merely as illustrative of the truth that man is the causer, though nearly always unconsciously. In other words, people are causing all your situations that are unattractive to you or uncomfortable for you. You're the causer of them, but you're doing it unconsciously. Because I don't think most people are thinking, I want to struggle, But what you've got to do is you've got to think, okay, of what you're thinking about. You've got to pay attention. One of the things that separates man from animal is that we have the ability to think about what we're thinking about and to control what we're thinking about and to change what we're thinking about. Only man has that ability. Animal does not. So the truth that man is the causer of his circumstances, and that whilst aiming at the good end, he is continually frustrating its accomplishments by encouraging thoughts and desires which cannot possibly harmonize with that end. In other words, thinking about doubtful things or negative things. Such cases could be multiplied and varied almost indefinitely, but this is not necessary. The reader can, if he so resolves, trace the action of the laws of thought in his own mind and life, and until this is done, mere external fact cannot serve as a ground of reasoning. In other words, you've got to go back and think about what you're thinking about all the time. So if you had a terrible month last month, for example, you need to go back. You don't need to tell any about this. You don't have to tell your spouse about it. You don't have to tell your upline about it. But you need to trace, what were you thinking about most often every day? And that will tell you why you are struggling or why you're doing well. Circumstances, however, are so complicated. Thought is so deeply rooted, and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that a man's entire soul condition, although it may be known to himself, cannot be judged by another from the external aspects of his life alone. A man may be honest in certain directions, yet suffer privations. A man may be dishonest in certain directions, yet acquire wealth. But the conclusion usually formed that the one man fails because of his particular honesty and that the other prospers because of a particular dishonesty is a result of a superficial judgment which assumes that the dishonest man is almost totally corrupt and honest man almost entirely virtuous. In the light of a deeper knowledge and wider experience, such judgment is found to be erroneous, in other words, wrong. The dishonest man may have some admirable virtues which the other does not possess. And plus, he's thinking about succeeding all the time, right? The honest man obnoxious vices which are absent in the other. The honest man reaps the good results of his honest thoughts and acts. He also brings upon himself the sufferings which his vices produce. The dishonest man likewise garners his own suffering and happiness. It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until a man has extirpated every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his soul can he be in a position to know and declare that his sufferings are the result of his good and not of his bad qualities. And on the way to, yet long before he's reached that supreme perfection, he will have found working in his mind and life the great law which is absolutely just and which cannot, therefore, give good for evil or evil for good. Possessed of such knowledge, he will then know, looking back upon his past ignorance and blindness, that his life is and always was justly ordered, that all his past experiences, good and bad, were the equitable outworking of his evolving yet unevolved self. Good thoughts and actions can never produce bad results. Bad thoughts and actions can never produce good results. This is but saying that nothing can come from corn but corn, and nothing from nettles but nettles. Men understand this law in the natural world and work with it, but few understand it in the mental and moral world, though its operation there is just as simple and undeviating, and they therefore do not cooperate with it. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in some direction. It is an indication that the individual is out of harmony with himself, with the law of his being. The sole and supreme use of suffering is to purify, to burn out all that is useless and impure. Suffering ceases for him who is pure. There could be no object in burning gold after the dross had been removed, and a perfectly pure and enlightened being could not suffer. The circumstances which a man encounters with suffering are the result of his own mental inharmony. The circumstances which a man encounters with blessedness are the result of his own mental harmony. Blessedness, not material possessions, is the measure of right thought. Wretchedness, not lack of material possessions, is the measure of wrong thought. A man may be cursed and rich. He may be blessed and poor. Blessedness and riches are only joined together when the riches are rightly and wisely used, and the poor man only descends into wretchedness when he regards his lot as a burden unjustly imposed. Indigence and indulgence are the two extremes of wretchedness. They are both equally unnatural and the result of a mental disorder. A man is not rightly conditioned until he is a happy, healthy, and prosperous being, and happiness, health, and prosperity are the result of a harmonious adjustment of the inner with the outer, of the man with his surroundings. A man only begins to be a man when he ceases to whine and revile, and commences to search for the hidden justice which regulates his life, and he adapts his mind to that regulating factor. He ceases to accuse others as the cause of his condition, and builds himself up in strong and noble thoughts, ceases to kick against circumstances, in other words, fight what is, but begins to use them as aids to his more rapid progress and as a means to discover the hidden powers and possibilities within himself. Law, not confusion, is the dominating principle in the universe. Justice, not injustice, is the soul and substance of life. Righteousness, not corruption, is the molding and moving force in the spiritual government of the world. This being so, man has but to right himself to find the universe is right. And during the process of putting himself right, he will find that as he alters his thoughts towards things and other people, things and other people will alter towards him. In other words, as you change your thinking about things and other people, those things and other people will alter themselves, will change themselves towards you. The proof of this truth is in every person, and it is therefore admits of an easy investigation by systematic introspection and self-analysis. Let a man radically alter his thoughts, and he will be astonished at the rapid transformation it will effect in the material conditions of his life. So if you've been struggling, if you can radically alter your thinking about your situation, the world as it is right now, how people are, how you are, what you are, that you're capable of doing so much more. If you would radically alter your thoughts, all to the positive, you would be astonished at the rapid transformation that it would affect in the material conditions of your life. Men imagine that thought can be kept secret, but it cannot. It rapidly crystallizes into habit, and habit solidifies into circumstance. Bestial thoughts crystallize into habits of drunkenness and sensuality, which solidify into circumstances of destitution and disease. Impure thoughts of every kind crystallize into enervating and confusing habits, which solidify into distracting and adverse circumstances. Thoughts of fear, thoughts of doubt and indecision crystallize into weak, unmanly, and irresolute habits. So this is big in our business. Thoughts of fear. Oh, what if he rejects me? What if he thinks I'm a salesperson? What if he thinks I'm part of a pyramid? What if he thinks I just want to try to sell him something? Or doubt. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm up to it. I don't know if people will follow me. Or indecision. Should I or shouldn't I? Should I or shouldn't I? Crystallize into weak, unmanly or unwomanly and irresolute habits, which solidify into circumstances of failure, indigence, and slavish dependence. Lazy thoughts crystallize into weak habits of uncleanliness and dishonesty, which solidify into circumstances of foulness and beggary. Hateful and condemnatory thoughts crystallize into habits of accusation and violence, which solidify into circumstances of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of self-seeking, which solidify into distressful circumstances. On the other hand, beautiful thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of grace and kindliness, which solidify into genial and sunny circumstances. Pure thoughts crystallize into habits of temperance and self-control, which solidify into circumstances of repose and peace. Thoughts of courage and self-reliance and decision crystallize into manly habits, which solidify into circumstances of success, plenty, and freedom. Energetic thoughts crystallize into habits of cleanliness and industry, which solidify into circumstances of pleasantness. Gentle and forgiving thoughts crystallize into habits of gentleness, which solidify into protective and preservation circumstances. Loving and unselfish thoughts, which solidify into circumstances of sure and abiding prosperity and true riches. A particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce its result on the character and circumstance. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly, yet surely, shape his circumstances. Nature helps every man to gratification of the thoughts which he most encourages, and opportunities are presented which will most speedily bring to the surface both the good and the evil thoughts. Let a man cease from his sinful thoughts, and all the world will soften towards him and be ready to help him. Let him put away his weakly and sickly thoughts, and the opportunities will spring up on every hand to aid his strong resolves. Let him encourage good thoughts, and no hard fate shall bind him down to wretchedness and shame. The world is your kaleidoscope, and the varying combinations of color which at every succeeding moment it presents to you are the exquisitely adjusted pictures of your ever-moving thoughts. You will be what you will to be. You will be what you will to be. Let failure find its false content in that poor word environment, but spirit scorns it and it's free. It masters time, it conquers space, it cows that boastful trickster, chance, and bids the tyrant circumstance uncrown and fill a servant's place. The human will, that force unseen, the offspring of deathless soul, can hew a way to any goal through the walls of granite intervene. Though the walls of granite intervene, be not impatient in delay, but wait as one who understands. When spirit rises and commands, the gods are ready to obey. So, folks, that's just a part of it. And I know a lot of this is it's written almost like in prose, okay? So, like, in other words, it was written, I don't even know the year that this was written, but it was written a long time ago, probably about 100 years ago. But it's exactly the same today as it was then. As you think, as a man thinketh, right, is exactly why we all are where we are. This is one of the reasons that, to me, why I talk about personal development and personal growth so often, and why I'm encouraging you to do it and to take the time to do it and to make the investment in yourself to do it, because it will determine how you think. What you read about, what you listen to, who you associate, are going to have the most profound impact on what you think about most often. And so it's very, very, very important that you control what you read, control what you listen to, control who you associate with. It's one of the things in 1979, folks, this was a turning point in my life in a huge way, in my business life. I was working in the retail jewelry business, and I was 22 years old, just graduated from college. I'd never sold anything before, and I was always a reader, though. I always liked to read. I'd been a reader since I was, 8, 9, 10 years old. I grew up a couple of blocks away from our city library in Chino, California, and I used to basically live at the library. I'd go there every day. I'd spend hours upon hours at the library. I was reading biographies and autobiographies of mostly of sports people at that time, and I was always reading. And when I got into the jewelry business, I didn't know anything about selling anything. I never sold anything. I was always very shy. I was always an introvert. And, for people that knew me back then, to see me speak in public, I've spoken in front of 50,000 people several times at conventions. And, it's what I do for a living. I'm doing calls like this every week, or speaking, at op meetings or at fast start schools, all that. I mean, if people who'd known me back then and were to see me today, they probably wouldn't even believe that it was Hector Lamarque doing that, because I was always a very shy, introverted person. I mean, I was the kind of person that, if I went to a kind of a family thing, I'd have a book with me and I'd sit in the corner and read while everybody else was talking and stuff. Or, I've talked about this on tapes often. I'd be in a mall walking, shopping, and I'd see somebody walking towards me that I knew, and if they hadn't seen me yet, I'd pop into a store and wait till they passed so I wouldn't have to talk to them, and cause I just didn't know what to say, So everything about this business, recruiting, training, developing people, being a leader, holding people accountable, making phone calls, setting appointments, following up, all that stuff that's so critical to being successful was incredibly difficult for me. It was not comfortable for me, okay? And had I not, started reading all the right books and understanding the difference between how unsuccessful people think and successful people think, and to alter my way of thinking about things, I never would have been able to accomplish what I've been able to accomplish in my business life. I mean, it just wouldn't have been possible. So what happened, I got recruited into Amway when I was working in the jewelry business. This guy recruited me, and he was pretty high up in Amway, and I got involved, and I started going to all the meetings. And those meetings, they charge you. You got to pay. Like op meetings were like $5 or something back then, and then if you took people, you had to pay for them, and it was ridiculous, but you had to pay. But the one thing they did is they were huge on personal development. They always had all these books that you should read, like Think and Grow Rich, et cetera, right? And As a Man Thinketh, and there's hundreds and hundreds of personal development books out there, and they had audio tapes. They'd sell those tapes. And so what I started doing through that, because personal development, and I did that for 2 years, and I recruited about 4 people in 2 years. I made, the best month I ever had. I made like $60 or something like that. So I failed miserably at Amway. All right. So, but the one thing that happened, and maybe one of the best things that's ever happened to me, is I really learned the importance of personal development, and I became a personal development fanatic. And from that point forward, from the time I was 22, that was like around 1980, which is 31 years ago, 32 years ago, I started reading, the right kind of books. In fact, back then I would, on my lunch break, every lunch break, I'd just have a quick sandwich, and then I'd go to the bookstore, and I don't know how many books I read cover to cover just in my half-hour break in bookstores, because I had no money, which I'm not proud of that, but later on I ended up buying all these books anyways. But I mean, I did that. I read all kinds of books on sales skills, on leadership skills, on time management, on anything having to do with success. I read everything that I could get my hands on. And then I started going to these personal development, they used to call them positive people rallies, where people like, Earl Nightingale and Wayne Dyer and et cetera, and all these kinds of people would speak at these events, Tom Hopkins, and I'd go to these things, and I just got consumed with personal development, and I just got better and better. And my thinking, what happened is my thinking got better and better. And I started to think like a winner. I started to think like millionaires think. I started to think like people who succeed in a big way think. And I changed and altered my thinking because I grew up in a home. I was a fifth of seven children, and my father was a Mexican immigrant with a third grade education. My mom went to like ninth grade maybe, and so books weren't even part of our life in my home. And but luckily I got into them through the library. And so, and everybody in my family had a huge Catholic family, so huge extended family, and nobody had ever been to college. No one owned their own business. Everybody worked in, construction, or they worked in factories, or janitors, or whatever. Nobody was successful financially in my family. I didn't know one single person that was successful financially. So for me to do what I've done, it took me completely, radically changing my thinking about everything. And it allowed me to do what I've done. And so for you to do what you want to do, you've got to do the same thing. That's why I know there's no shortcuts to this. This is going to take some time to get there. I mean, it's a lifelong process. I'm still doing it, okay? So, but the faster and the more you invest in doing this, like with turning your car into a university, so that every time you get in your car, you're just populating your mind and your thinking with right thoughts, with good thinking, of success-oriented kind of thinking. And when you're reading anything, instead of reading, fiction novels or whatever it is, People magazine or Us magazine or Inquirer, all the garbage that people read, you're reading, ingesting stuff into your mind that will move you in the direction you want to go, right? It improves you. Or when you're watching, instead of watching TV, watch a video of somebody that's that will help you. I mean, just make it a point that you carry a book with you everywhere you go, so that you always have a chance to read. Like I would carry a book in my briefcase. I'd have a book, in my kitchen. I'd have a book in the restroom. I'd have a book on my desk at my office. And every chance I had, if I went on an appointment and, I was there 20 minutes early, I could knock out 2 or 3 chapters of a book I was just reading, or I could listen to an audio, or I could do something that would grow me, that would get me closer to being the kind of person and leader that I wanted to be. I just was constantly doing that. And then little by little, from doing that, my thinking got better and better. As a result of my thinking getting better, my actions got better and better. And then I just started to have more and more self-confidence, because really, those of you who are hearing me on this call, your self-confidence is critical. You are never going to attempt anything that scares you, that's kind of daunting, unless you have self-confidence. Self-confidence is not being absolutely positive things are going to go well. It means you're going to still have problems. But self-confidence is knowing, I know I'm going to have problems, but I know I'm resourceful enough to get through it and to figure out how to fix it if something happens. I know I can learn these 7 fundamentals. I know that I can master them. I know that once I master them, I'm going to be able to teach them to other people. I know that I can get there. I know it. Now, I know it's not going to be easy, but I have confidence in myself. I'm self-confident that I can win at some point. That's all in the early stages of my career. I'd never done this before. I'd never recruited anybody. I'd never built a sales force before like that. I'd never done any of the things that you have to do, right? But I knew, because I've had other successes in my life, like through sports and to school and whatever, that I knew that I could get there. I knew that I would pay the price to learn the things I needed to learn, in this case the 7 fundamentals, etc., so that I could have success. And that once I started having success, I could teach other people to have success. I knew, and I didn't know how long that was going to take, if it was going to take 6 months or 18 months or 3 years or 5 years. It didn't really matter to me. I knew I could get there. And I knew that when I got there, that the prize was significant enough, because in Primerica, the prize is you can make $100 or $500 or $1 million or $2 million or $3 or $4 or $5 million a year if you want to. So the prize for doing the work to get there is gigantic in our business relative to a job. Like if you have a job right now, if you're still working, you have a job right now, check out and find out what the top income you could earn there. And how much freedom would you have if you had that top income? I mean, I have unbelievable level of freedom in my business. And even if you're just making $100,000 or $200,000 a year in Primerica, you still have amazing amount of freedom. You don't have a boss other than your partner, really, your spouse. But if you don't really have a boss, nobody's telling you what days you have to work or can't work, or if a child has an event like a play or something like a ball game or something like that, you can go to that. Nobody's going to tell you can't go to that. I mean, you have a lot of freedom. Now, also you have responsibility. You've got to get things done, but you have a lot of freedom. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you don't make a commitment to growing yourself, then life is always going to be up and down. It's always going to be challenging. You're always going to struggle to some extent. But if you make the commitment to really grow you, to become who you can become, to really pay the price to do that, then there are no limits for you. You know, there are no limits. All the limits you have are self-imposed limiting thoughts that create the limits in your life. That's all it is, okay? And so I don't care if you've been around for a long time. Some of you have been around in Primerica for a long time. You've never gotten off the ground. But really, can you with a straight face, with a total sincerity, say, I've done everything I can to grow myself in every area that I need to, like my time management, my leadership skills, and my sales skills, and my knowledge of our products and services and how to market those and sell the features and benefits. I've really done everything I can do to be absolutely as prepared and as good as I can be. The truth is, if you're not doing incredibly well, you haven't done that yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you haven't done it, you can do it now. You can start anew today. You can make a new decision that you're going to become that person, that leader, that example of inspiration to other people. You can decide that right now, right this moment, right this second, and then you need to of course you need to act. You need to go to work and do some of the things I mentioned earlier in the call about turning your car into a university and all those things. But it's critical that you do that, because no one person, your upliner, is not going to have all the answers for you or going to be able to spend all the amount of time that you probably want them to with you. You're going to have to take it upon yourself to go get the answers, to go find them. Don't wait for somebody to spoon feed you, to sit down and put a bib on you and then take a bowl and then spoon feed you. It's not going to happen. You've got to do it yourself. You've got to take control of your life. You've got to stop waiting for things to happen, and you need to start making them happen for you, okay? Because those people who are waiting for things to happen are going to wait for the rest of their lives, you know. It's not going to happen. People are wanting to win. I'll buy spend $10 on lottery tickets every week or every month, or however long those things are, right? So that I can, when I've heard people always say, my parents used to say, if I won the lottery, this is what I would do. And I'm thinking, why the hell don't you just go to work and make up your own lottery? I won the lottery in Primerica. I made over $60 million a year. I won the lottery, but I didn't wait for it to happen. I built it. I created it, okay, through what I thought about. Just like you're creating what you have by what you're thinking about. So go make it happen. Don't wait for anything to happen, right? Don't wait for your boss to give you a promotion. Don't wait for things to get better. Go make them better. Make yourself better first. I'm telling you, life gets fun and easy when you get better. As you grow and get better, life gets easier. People who struggle because of lack of awareness, a lack of preparedness, and poor thinking. That's fixable. You can fix that. All right? Go make it happen. Don't stop until you do make it happen. You focus like crazy on what you need to do to make this happen. This is your chance to change your life. Every one of you listening to this call is in complete control of their life. Is it going to happen overnight? No, of course it's not. But if you start thinking right, it's going to happen.